Hello, my name's Sandy Sammarco. I'm a principal designer at Frontier Developments, and I've been working on Realms of Ruin. And today, I'm going to give you a brief overview of one of the ways that you can play the game, which is Conquest Mode. Okay, so the first thing you're going to see when you choose Conquest Mode is this screen, and it's where you configure your conquest. And I'll give a brief overview of what these tabs are. It's set at Lawkeeper at the moment, which is the simplest difficulty, the easiest difficulty. So I'm going to change from that. But fundamentally, it affects these two elements here. So starting lives and score bonus. So the starting lives on Lawkeeper, it's 4. That's 4 attempts. So if I just change it to say veteran, because I'm feeling a bit tasty, I can take this. You see, it's halved my starting lives, and that's really important. As we'll find out a bit later. Lives are what they say they are. When you run out of lives, your conquest run is over. And the score bonus is how much extra score you get for increasing the difficulty. So you see it's 100% plus 100%. If I go back to Lawkeeper, it starts at 0. So Lawkeeper, the easiest difficulty, that's your starting value, your base value for score. So the next bit is the seed. This is really cool. So the Conquest Mode procedurally generates the world that you fight in, and then from that procedural generation a seed is generated, and you can, down here there's a button to randomize the seed, so you can just make sure that every time you start a conquest it's completely randomized. After that we've got faction, pretty self-explanatory. There are 4 factions in Realms of Ruin, of which the Stormcast Eternals is the one I'm going to play as. I could play as the Crawl Boys, the Auric Crawl Boys, I could play as the Nighthaunt, I could play as the faction I'm not allowed to talk about, annoyingly, because it's a really cool faction. But for the purposes of this little demonstration, we'll stick as the Stormcast. After that, there's a tab for army loadout, which I won't go into any details here because I think we're going to talk about that a little bit closer to launch. And then at the bottom, you've got your colour palette. And I'm going to stick with the Hammers of Sigmar classic colour palette, but obviously there's a bunch of other official palettes in there. Okay, now we've talked about all of the elements of this screen, why don't we start a game and see how it all turns out. Okay, and this is what has been generated for us. It's a very cool overland or overview map of an area of Gur, the Realm of Beasts. And this is where all of my fights are going to take place. This is where my conquest is going to happen. There are a bunch of elements. So here, this is me, where I start. It's the lovely Stormcast sigil. And then each of these points, either the expanded ones, like these, or these little ones, little shields, they all represent potential battles. And the idea is I need to fight my way through this map to this battle, which is the final boss battle, as it were. If once I defeat the Overlord on this map, I would have completed my conquest. So how do I do that? Well, it's really straightforward. I start here. I've got routes that I can take that represent battles. As I win battles, nearby locations will then open up. So it's likely that if I take on this battle and win, that there'll be routes to this one and that one. An interesting point, you don't know the routes until you've conquered that particular battle. And although the routes, they more or less make sense, you can get some outliers, which are really interesting. So if you want to get to this endpoint really quickly, there's an amount of detective work, effectively, to work out the best route to it. So obviously, I've got to beat it at the end to get the final score. The real question becomes, how much of the map do I want to conquer? Obviously, you've got a score that starts at 0. Each time you win a battle, you defeat an enemy, your score's increased. So obviously, the more battles that you win before you get to the boss, the more score you'll get. And this is where the lives come into it. So I picked veteran, I think. So I've got 2 lives. Every time you fail at a battle, you lose a life. And once both of your lives have gone, in this case, or all 4 if you're on Lawkeeper, or 1 if you're man enough to take on the hardest difficulty, your conquest is over. You've effectively failed. So there's always a friction as to how much of the map do you want to claim as score versus how confident are you that you can do it all and get to this boss battle. And you'll notice also that you've got these fellas as well. So these are sub-bosses, effectively. These are Crawl Boys, and then this is a Nighthaunt. Now, sub-bosses have got a little treasure chest next to them, because when you defeat a sub-boss, you get a bonus that you can take. There are 2 bonuses to choose from. So sometimes it might be worthwhile taking those on. We'll have a look at one of those in a minute. Okay, so before we start interrogating some of these nodes, It's worth pointing out that the map itself is very pretty, but it too is procedurally generated, and there is information embedded within it. The little graphics that are around these nodes, these shields and expanded shields, they will describe what the biome of the battle will be that it takes place in. So here, I think this looks like swamplands to me. This could be petrified swamp. I think here, this looks like sulfur flats. So you can just take in a lot just from the map itself. So let's start looking at a couple of these nodes, because all of the expanded ones you can interrogate. So if I pick this one, it's pretty straightforward. It's got the map that it's going to be fought on, the win condition, which is crush your enemy, which makes sense, and the enemy that you fight, Nighthaunt. But if I look at, say, one of the sub-bosses or the main boss, which you can always interrogate from the start, all of the bosses, you see there's a bit more meat to this. So obviously it's got the map name still, Buried Brick, and I'm fighting the Crawl Boys, and the conditions the same. But this is where a really cool part of Conquest Mode comes to the fore, which is the fact that the various battles, the various maps that you fight on, can have twists. And these twists, there's a big old list of them. So, for example, on this one, Battle of Bodies, you get slightly reduced victory score when your units are defeated. That's a massive change. That means that you can control victory points, but if you do it in a way that is messy and inefficient, i.e. you lose lots of units, your victory score will start to go down, even if you control the majority of victory points. And here, this is just a bit nasty in a fun way. The enemy is just going to get through its research tech tree quicker, a little bit quicker than you are. So all in all, that's clearly going to make that much more of a difficult fight. If you beat it, you can choose one of these, so you can get an additional life. If you're down to one life, that's always a good option, because you never know, you might run into a battle that's a little bit tough. But if you're feeling really bold and you're doing well, then 25% score increase. So that's a great one for if you think, yeah, I'm smashing this, I've got it in the bag. And I just take a quick look at the final boss, because I want to know what I'm up against at the very end. So here you can see it's a Nighthaunt Overlord in the Withered Wilds. And here, slightly reduce your starting victory score. That's a bit mean. And slightly decrease the max population. That's actually very mean. So again, a really tough fight. But as you can see, if you complete it, the conquest will end and your score will be totted up, and then you can go and brag about it to everyone. So I guess I better start trying to work my way through towards that Nighthaunt Overlord. Really straightforward. I just select a map. So obviously I can see with these, they probably don't go anywhere. There might be a link to that one, but because both of these battles, there's no twist in them, and they're both against Nighthaunts, it really comes down to, well, do I want to play on Reclaim or do I want to play on Flowstone? I'm feeling the Flowstone. So I just click on that and I'll just start the game. Okay, so I'm a little bit further into the Conquest, as you can see now. It's not been trouble-free. I had to do a detour because I thought there was going to be a clean route all the way down to the boss. It turns out it wasn't, so I had to kind of go back up, take on another fight, and then unfortunately this one here, I can actually interrogate it, there was a slight decrease of the health of all units that I wasn't really prepared for what it would have. I thought, oh wait, it affects us both, that should be fine. Turns out it affected me a little bit harsher than it affected the AI. So I lost that one, which you can see the little blood splat now around it. So that's eternal shame for me on this map. However, I did defeat it on my second try. And I've only got one life left, so I'm a little bit worried. But I've got a clear route through. In fact, I've only got, if I want to progress now, I've got to take this battle. And it's against the Crawl Boys again on the Starving Swamp. Right, okay, so you can see now, this is an interesting one. There is only one victory point in this battle, so it's effectively turned it into a King of the Hill scenario. So I'm going to have to take that into account. Well, whether I won or lost that particular Conquest map, and that's for me to know and you to wonder. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this little introduction though to what Conquest Mode is, and I'm really looking forward, we're all really looking forward to you getting hold of it and playing it when the game launches in November.